Forget gurus. Forget anyone claiming to be an online business expert without going through the challenges of entrepreneurship themselves. The Real Money, Real Business podcast is here to prove the best insights in online business comes from your fellow online business builders. We dig into stories of entrepreneurs selling their business on the Empire Flippers marketplace so that you can learn how they made their business profitable, how they overcame obstacles, and what lessons they learned in their online journey. If you want to take your business and your knowledge to the next level, you've come to the right podcast. Let's get started.
Hello everyone, Craig here with another great business to discuss in this episode of the Real Money, Real Business podcast. Today's guest is Marcel, and he's selling his Amazon Associates affiliate and display advertising business on the Empire Flippers marketplace. So welcome to the show, Marcel. How are you doing today?
Good. Thanks for having me on.
It's good to have you on. I'm looking forward to talking more about your business. But before we dive in, let's go over a brief summary of the business. It's an Amazon Associates affiliate and display advertising business in the sports niche, created in April 2017. The average monthly revenue for the business is $4,394, and it makes an average of $4,356 net profit each month. For everyone listening, you can visit empireflippers.com/marketplace and search for listing 51566 to learn more about the business, or you can unlock this listing to start your due diligence if you're interested in purchasing this asset. So now that I've given a general overview of the business, let's have a look at what's included in the sale. We have the domain with all site content and files, an email list with 1,920 subscribers, and social media accounts for Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and Pinterest. Okay, Marcel, now let's hear from you. Can you tell us a little about your background in building and running online businesses?
Yeah, sure. So I don't want to bore you with a long story, but I might as well start from the beginning. So the first memory I have of getting into the idea of making money online was back in 2000 and 2001. I went back to school to get an MBA, and I remember the teacher mentioning this new company called Google, and that there was this idea of, positioning websites, and that they were also starting click advertising. And I distinctly remember someone in the class asking to repeat it. And we all wrote down in our notebook, Google. So I have that memory of first hearing about search engines and Google. So I went home and researched it. And soon after that, I bought a very simple book on search engine optimization, and kind of got hooked. So from there, a friend of mine who lived in a very touristy city had a vacation rental. This was pre-Airbnb, so it was pretty early in the game. They were paying 25% commission to somebody at a website, like a local property manager. And I suggested that I could do a website for them. And at the time, Google was pretty simple. It was basically a blank slate with a few ads at the top. And using what I learned in that book, I was able to get onto the first page. And that turned into a pretty nice little side hustle. At the time, I was working for a software company full time, and it was just a side gig. But by the mid 2005, 2006, I was kind of the point where I thought, hey, maybe I could, quit my job and do this full time, because by then other people in the city had found my website, and I was up to about a dozen properties, and the commissions were pretty good. So, but I think like a lot of people, I had the fear of taking the leap and quitting my job. So for years, I just kind of had that side gig until 2015. I got laid off from my software job and was kind of thrown into unemployment and looking for an opportunity. And the one thing I promised myself was, after being laid off after 15 years, I said I'd never work for anybody again. So that's kind of how I got back into it full time, looking to make money online.
Excellent. Yeah, it's a really inspiring story. And it seems you were one of the early starters in the affiliate game.
Yeah, I think at the time it was really early, and I never really thought of it as a full-time thing. But yeah, looking back, I kind of wish I kicked myself for not realizing the potential it had at the time.
Yeah, you were ahead of the game for sure, definitely. And was there anything you learned in your software role that you applied to affiliate?
Well, I think about that job is I worked on the support end. So people would report bugs with the software, and I had to do very detailed testing. And I think in a way that helps me a lot as far as the content creation and the keyword research, as far as trying to figure out how to answer the problem or how to do a lot of documentation. And that research worked out well, because a lot of the niches that I'm in, I'm kind of a contrarian. A lot of people tell others online that you have to pick something you're passionate about or that you're a total expert on. And I take more of the approach of, like a scientific, say a research paper that I had to do in school. If you start studying a topic, you don't necessarily know anything about it, but if you put enough time into it, you can kind of become an expert just through research. So I think that part of the job helped. There was a lot of documentation and researching behind, what was causing the problem. So that might help.
Yeah, of course. It seems that it's worked for you for this business. So with this business that we have today, how come you came up with the idea to start this one?
So when I got laid off, I kind of went full, I went to the deep end as far as like researching ways to make money online. I started with Amazon FBA, and I did that for 1 full year. I launched 2 products. And after a full year, I kind of had to sit down and decide, like, do I want to keep going with the FBA route? And I think for me, it just wasn't a good fit. I launched the 2 products and kind of created a brand. But I think the idea of, having inventory and storing it and shipping it, I was outsourcing from China. It just added a lot of stress to me to put that capital out, not knowing if I'd make it back. So then I moved to Amazon merch and I did t-shirts for maybe 6 months and I got some traction there. And then if anybody's ever done merch or any kind of, online with the t-shirts, Amazon only has a certain amount of printing capacity. So the holidays came and what they call throttling, or people in the industry call throttling. A lot of my designs were no longer showing up on Amazon. So I'm getting to the point, but the end of the story is that I fell upon affiliate marketing. It sounded like a better match for me because I felt like I was a pretty decent writer. I enjoyed research. And so I took a course early 2017 about an online course, pretty well-known course about how to create an affiliate marketing website, or what a lot of people call an authority website. And I just went, down the rabbit hole of researching affiliate marketing and spending all my time researching and then finally launching this site. That was early 2017.
Yeah, sounds like you've focused on the skill sets you already have to grow the business. So yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And how does this business primarily make money?
So to start, it was 100% Amazon. I wrote a lot of info content and guides around this sport, kind of aimed more at the beginner, answering simple questions on strategy, training, and then slowly started adding more product-based buyer intent, keywords, best of lists. And so in the beginning, it was all Amazon affiliates. And as with anything, if you only have one source of income, it's not great as far as risk. So I realized I had to try to diversify a bit. So since then, in the last, after the first, say, 2 years of just doing Amazon, added a few private affiliate deals from smaller retailers. And then just recently in 2020, added display ads. So it's not a great, even split like 3 ways, but it's at least diversified to the point where it's not all Amazon. So it's probably 80% Amazon and then 10% display ads and then 10% other affiliate offers. I think in the last couple of months that's gotten better, but if you look over the average of the last year or say 9 months, it's more 80-20.
Absolutely. Yeah, you're absolutely right. To diversify those revenue streams is a good way to solidify the business. And you mentioned that you chose this niche in particular with no connection to it. What was your process for choosing this niche?
Yeah, so when I was in the course, they talked a lot about the idea was either pick a passion, a hobby, or something that solves a problem. So the typical problem would be like something like weight loss or smoking or something like that. But I still have the notebook. I wrote down dozens of ideas, and a lot of the niches were things that I was passionate about. But I just kept noticing that, one, they were either oversaturated, too competitive, or some of them were seasonal activities. And this niche is very specific. So I think that's actually one of the challenges is when people see it, it might seem like it's almost, if you're not into the niche, it might seem too hard. But because I did a lot of the research and I learned so much about it, the foundation is there. So, but to go back to your question, I think it ticked all the boxes. This demographic and the people that play this sport are very engaged. They're very into it, relatively high income level. It's also got, as far as the Amazon affiliates, it's kind of the sweet spot as far as the gear that you need to play this sport is kind of in that sweet spot where people don't have to think long and hard about it. Because once they get to Amazon, it's basically, if you've got the cookie and they buy in 24 hours. So it's got the good price range, and then it's got a couple big ticket items also. So I think for me, and the other thing is if you go to Google Trends, I just kept seeing like this niche is definitely on an upward tick. So that's why I finally went for it. And the course I was taking was also, it had like a case study to follow along. And that was based on a sport. So it was really easy to kind of use their example as a template.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's something not often talked about. I mean, you go for popular niches, but the type of audience you have as well, if they're very loyal, very passionate about their niche as well, that can be great for business as well. That's an interesting point you touched upon there. You found this great niche, you've got a business that's growing, so naturally I'm curious as to why you're selling the business at this point.
Yeah, that's a really good question. And I think if I was listening to myself, I'd be asking the same question because that sounds a little good to be true. Like, great niche, it's growing, it's making good money. But I think the thing I've realized, and the reason why I'm selling this, is I really enjoy the beginning stage of building websites. My problem is I do it too much. So right now I've got 7 of them. This one it's one of the ones that's in the middle. So I have one site that I'm working on now that's traffic-wise is about 10 times this size. And I just don't have the time. And maybe somebody who bought this, if they were good at like creating a team or even just delegating, I tend to be like, I want to control things. So I've done everything on all my sites myself. But now I find myself in a place where I'm just, that term some people use, like in the weeds. Like we used to use that when I worked back in college when I was a waiter or bartender, where you just have too much stuff going on. You can't even see what to do next. So I feel like I really need to slow down and like some of my websites and get down to, I think for myself, since I like to work mostly by myself, I don't have a partner or a team. Realistically, you can't really do, at least for me personally, I can't do more than 2 or 3 sites and do them well. So this site has been really abandoned. I mean, I really haven't put much work into it at all in 2020. And the passive income is good, but I think in the long term, my efforts are better off, focusing on a couple websites. So.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Is there anything you learned from building this business that you'll apply to future sites or businesses?
Well, I think the big thing was a learning lesson is just don't try to do everything myself, and outsource or partner with people that have the skills. So I'm good at SEO and I feel like I'm a pretty decent writer. So the content and the SEO are dialed in. I mean, it ranks really well for a lot of keywords. But I know the theory. I mean, I've gone to business school and I understand the ideas behind marketing and branding, but I just don't execute it. I think what I've learned is that's probably better to do what I know and then partner with somebody. So what I'm doing also, and this is another reason I forgot to mention this, but as far as selling the business and refocusing, I've got a long-term friend that's been in marketing for 30 years, and she likes the idea of quitting her job and being self-employed like me. So we're partnering on a new website, and she's passionate about this niche, and she really knows it well. So I'm going to basically bring to the table the SEO and the content management, and she'll do social and the newsletter and brand outreach and collaborations, which I'm just not good at. So I guess circling back to your question is do what you're good at. And that's what I plan to do on my next project. Just kind of focus on what I like to do and let her take over the rest of it.
Yeah, absolutely. Makes a lot of sense. And you mentioned SEO. What was your sort of SEO growth strategy for this business?
Well, so when I say SEO, I should say I'm thinking more the keyword research, the on-page. I think my site is all very well interlinked. I understand just from my past is, not doing the old stuff that worked back 20 years ago as far as like keyword spamming and that kind of stuff. It's just writing good content, going after the right kind of keywords. But I don't do any active link building or real technical SEO. It's more just understanding how to optimize my content to get to the top of Google and then interlink my pages so that they, you keep the people on the page. It has very good, as far as how long people stay on the page and how many pages per visit is very high. So I would say somebody who's more a technically SEO in the sense of if they're really good at link building, that would be a huge asset because I don't do it all. I mean, the only link building I did was there were a couple resources that I made. So really long articles, like guides for beginners. And then it was a very manual process, but I emailed lots and lots of websites and people in the niche, and a lot of them linked to me. But I never bought a link or I didn't do any kind of PBN or anything technical like that.
Is there anything you tried with this site that didn't work out for you?
Well, as far as things I tried, I think I just tinkered too much with stuff. I spent time on little things that I would think made a difference that I think in the end I should have just spent more time on content. I probably should have gone and hired even just one person like I'm not a branding person. I'm not good at graphic design because of my personality. I just do everything myself. I think me tinkering with, a featured image in WordPress was a waste of time trying to make a little graphic. I should have just, instead of me tinkering around with it, I should have just hired somebody out to do that. So as far as things that didn't work, I think what did work was the content. So I probably should have just spent more time putting out more articles and outsourced some of the graphic design and social and the branding. Because I'll admit, if you look at the website right now, it's cringeworthy in a lot of ways. I think a graphic designer, somebody who's built websites, even like the logo, I made it, which was a bad idea. That was just a lot of my kind of putzing around and trying to do it myself. So if I do it again from the get-go, I would have just put aside a little budget, a graphic designer.
Quite right. Yeah, it's sticking to your strengths like you mentioned before, and anyone with any skills in branding, yeah, that's definitely a growth opportunity for a buyer. And you mentioned that the main traffic channel is SEO. Have you tried any other forms of marketing for this business?
Hardly any. I think this is the demographic and the age group, they're very into Facebook, but personally, I can't really stand Facebook. So I've gone in and in 2020, there was a young guy in the industry who kind of wanted to get his foot in content marketing and kind of do some content. So he did half a dozen guest posts. And I told him that if he wrote for me, I would boost those posts. So, it was literally 10 or 20 bucks a post. And I think it was 2019 holiday season, I did a very small Facebook campaign for like best gifts for that season. But I admit, again, it's something I'm not good at. I don't really know how to optimize Facebook ads. And I don't enjoy being on Facebook, or other social media. So I think even just somebody who was used to going in and even just going in once a month and scheduling out a daily post, could get a little bump of traffic. And it is a highly engaged. So I did notice when I would do it, I would get some shares and I get people coming to the site. So I think somebody who understood how to optimize ads and then do, like I said, more of the branding, do a newsletter, you really could create a brand with this website, which right now it really doesn't have.
Yeah, it's good for a potential buyer to know that there's good engagement on Facebook. So that could be a growth area potentially. And you have an email list as well. Do you send any emails out for email marketing?
Again, neglected on my part. There's a list that's close to 2,000. When I first started the list, which was last year at some point, I think it coincided with this young guy doing the guest post. So that would have been, I think, early to mid 2020 is when I put the list on. I did the first 3 months, I did a little blast just saying, here's a new post from this guy. And then I just totally dropped it. So I think I'd have to look, but I think September was probably the last time I sent an email. So again, there's a list of people that, potentially wanted to hear about the sport, but that would be something you could just easily repurpose some of the existing guides and posts and just set up it's on MailChimp. You could just set up a template and do, I think to start even just a monthly newsletter. And then if you were good at brand, there's a lot of, quite a few brands have reached out to me. And again, just through my neglect, I haven't really followed up, but some of them are willing to do giveaways or discounts. So if you had somebody just keeping in contact with the brands, you could probably come up pretty easily with a frequent giveaway, another way to get people to sign up and engage.
Yeah, absolutely. That's some good ideas. So we've talked about how social media could be a good channel for the business, building and growing the email list, enhancing the branding. Are there any other major opportunities for growth you think there are for this business?
Yeah, I do think there's kind of two different potential buyers. If you look at it, it's going on 4 years. From year 2 on, the income has been really stable. So I think you could be, the person looking for just passive income. And I think there it would just be the quick win would just be log in more often. I went in the other day and I was surprised. I still had a couple articles that were best of, and they still showed 2019, still ranking, but obviously, the conversion on those was probably a lot lower. Just keeping up with out of stock items or updating the recommended products. I clicked on a couple that I realized were discontinued product. Spent maybe 2 hours going through a couple, and within 48 hours on Amazon, I was already seeing those new products were showing up in my affiliate account. So one thing would just be run it passively like me, but not quite so passively. Just put a couple hours in a week to keep it up to date. If you wanted to really grow it, I feel like I'm being repetitive, but I think it's the person who understands branding, marketing, outreach, I really do. And I know probably most people trying to sell the site are going to say this, but I do think there's an engaged, growing audience for this. So it's really somebody who has the skills I don't, which is marketing, branding, social. If you really want to take this beyond that level, I would say, you could take it offline in the sense that people do reach out to me to sponsor tournaments. I had players ask me to sponsor them, charities asking me to give, whatever gear or whatever. I've never done any of that stuff, but you could create a brand that's recognizable in this audience offline. Because I've done FBA. I'm not interested in FBA because I don't think it was a good fit for me, but I've seen several brands in this niche that have launched on Amazon and actually do pretty well, to the point where I actually feature some of their products on my site. So I think it's a pretty feasible product to launch on FBA. And then again, I did do merch for a while. So I didn't mention this because I can't track the exact earnings, but I do rank for the keyword, t-shirts plus this niche. So it ranks pretty well for t-shirts and, sweatshirts and other merch. I do have a page where I link to my own stuff on Amazon merch. So if you were a graphic designer, had a team of graphic designers, you can create your own whole line of merchandise and link to yourself, swap those out and link to your own merchandise. So there's a lot of potentials. I think it depends. Are you a content person, or do you actually want to build a brand with products and merchandise? And I think there's a huge potential for the right person.
Yeah, absolutely. Because this business is in quite a niche, right? It's not the most popular sport. So would you say there's a lot of competition in this niche?
Yeah, so you're totally right. It's very specific niche. It's a young, growing sport. As far as competition, I think I got in at the perfect time. I just happened to take this affiliate marketing course. They say it's a good thing if you can see some competition, but not a ton of competition. I think it was a perfect time because there were a few people doing it, but they were just kind of dabbling. And I was unemployed and I went full in and really got into it. So competition wise, I do see, and you can kind of tell just looking at the typical affiliate marketer, but they're not putting the time into it. They'll throw up 20 articles and they're just going out to Amazon and they're picking like the best sellers and putting it into like a plugin with the pros and cons and the stars. But they don't have like the guides that I have. I mean, some of my guides are over 10,000 words, and it's basically because I was fully dedicated to this. I refused to go back to work for somebody else. So I was like, this has to work. So for a whole year, I was just going back and I'd read an article about something. I'd go back and update and, add another section. So my guides, I think, I'm trying to be objective here. I know everybody loves their content and things. It's great. But I think the competitors have a hard time because I think it's definitely appealing for people if they're going to see this is a growing niche and it's relatively, young and I can get into it. But are they going to put in the time to write 100 articles that are like really in depth? So I think that's what you got going for it is I see people come and go, but I'm still ranking at the top. So
yeah, absolutely. It's certainly a growing niche, and the fact that the audience is so engaged and you're seeing engagement on Facebook, it's certainly signs that it could be a highly profitable niche, especially because the low competition, you're sort of establishing yourself as a leader in the niche as well. So that's all great stuff. You mentioned that you've taken a bit of a hands-off approach with this business at the moment. What sort of day-to-day tasks do you do to maintain the site?
Yeah, so I'm literally just doing the most basic maintenance. So that's kind of my routine in the morning. I get my coffee and I check on all my 7 sites. So I'm literally on this site just checking traffic to make sure there was no major fluctuation. I update WordPress plugins when needed. And then, I check the keyword rankings just to make sure there's no major fluctuation. But like I said, I went in the other day and I was surprised how abandoned I had. I hadn't really updated a lot of posts. So I think that's not a very good idea. Obviously, anybody in this business knows if you let your site go stagnant, it's eventually going to be a detriment. So I think the realistic thing, I know a lot of people say, I don't work on it. It's totally passive. But this one really is. It's the most passive out of any of my sites. But I think the real thing would be spend a couple hours a week at least going in. Obviously, getting familiar with all the content, but then just checking on out of stock products, checking the rankings more. And then I would probably add, even if you just had 1 article a month just to keep it fresh, or if you wanted to really build it up, you could obviously do much more than that. But right now I'm basically doing absolute minimum, but that's probably not a great idea.
So what do you think are the biggest risks with this business that a buyer should be aware of?
I think the risks you mentioned is attractive niche. I mean, for people that want to get into affiliate marketing, if they go to Google Trends or they read any articles, it pops up in the press quite a bit about how quickly this sport is growing. So it could be one of those things where, it becomes more popular. Other risks, I guess, I think the brands are catching on that, content is important. I actually had one of the brands reach out to me about buying the site. In the end, they decided against it because they realized if they wanted to make it all centric around their brand, it would kind of lose the value of, I talk about all the brands and I talk about their competitors. But the fact that they reached out to me shows me that they understand that content is important. So I think that's where somebody who did know outreach and could build relationships with people in the business could kind of isolate themselves from the competition, just diversify more and make you more of a brand beyond just an Amazon affiliate site.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I would agree with that 100%. So overall, putting yourself in the shoes of a buyer, why do you think this is a business worth buying?
Well, I think it's solid. I mean, if you look at the traffic after the first year of putting all that work into it, the traffic has been pretty steady. If you end up looking at my analytics, you'll notice a dip in the spring. It was COVID, so a lot of the facilities and stuff were closed. So besides that dip in the spring of 2020, it's been pretty stable. Earnings have also been really stable. Obviously, I understand Empire Flippers has to recalculate my earnings from the previous to the May commission change. But if you look at it, even with that change, the income has been pretty steady. And then other reasons for buying it, I think, is just the growth. I mean, there's third party, don't take it from me, but if you look at third party, like sports industry studies are showing that it's been growing at double digits and it's expected to continue over 10% growth every year for the next several years. So the growth itself, I think if you just kept ranking at the top and assume 10% more people are searching for it, in theory, you should potentially grow without even really having to rank any higher. And then all those growth opportunities I mentioned, I mean, if you wanted to reach out to players and brands, and there's all kinds of potentials, everything, like I said, from products to merch. There's a few people doing digital products now, which I actually get an affiliate commission off the digital training program. It's something, if you were really into that, you could create an ebook or you could create like an online course. I mean, now with COVID, people are doing Zoom for everything. So I get 20% of commission off that. And I haven't really pushed it at all, but digital products is another. And then adding more affiliates and diversifying. So I think there's a lot of upside for it if you're willing to see beyond. Like I did, I don't pick niches that I'm only passionate about. I pick niches that have potential, and people would be surprised at the niches I have because it's not stuff that are part of my, it's not as though I'm a competitive player in this sport. I mean, I've played around with it and I understand it. You could easily do it without being an expert or having any passion for it.
Yeah, all good stuff that I agree with. It's a good niche that could have potential, and you've set the business up very well and just to make regular income with minimal maintenance. So, yeah, I mean, regarding the sale of this business, would you commit to a non-compete?
Oh, yeah, definitely. I mean, like I said, I feel like it's time to move on and do other stuff. And the niches that I'm in are totally different. And the one I'm building with my partner now is going to be totally different. So I have no plans to re-enter this niche.
And how much support are you willing to offer buyers? Are you going for the standard 30 days of email and Skype support?
Yeah, but I mean, if this sells, I definitely want to make sure the other person who takes this over is successful. So, I mean, it's just my personality, but I tend to do, for my writers, I'll do like short 5-minute recordings of screens. And I mean, I would definitely go out of my way to explain. I understand because it's also pretty niche that they're going to need some extra explanation of, there's lots of ideas that I have that I'm definitely willing and happy to document all these ideas I've had that I never get to. So yeah, I would say 30 days and the calls, but during those 30 days, don't expect a short email. I would give you my whole business plan of what I should have done and what I would do if I had the time.
Excellent stuff. Yeah, I'm sure that'd be very helpful for a potential buyer. And are you open to negotiating something like an earnout?
Yeah, I mean, I think ideally I'd like a full payout, but I'm open to any serious offers and I'm willing to discuss any kind of creative deals. So yeah, if anyone's interested, I'd rather hear the deal than say no to an earnout.
Okay. Is there anything else you'd like to share that I might have missed?
No, I think that's been it. I hope I didn't ramble too much, but thanks for having me and giving me the time to explain it.
Brilliant. Well, thank you very much for your time, Marcel. It's been great talking to you.
All right. Thanks a lot, Craig.
All right, everyone. Thanks for listening. To learn more and see if this listing has already been sold, head over to empireflippers.com/marketplace and search for listing 51566. If you're watching this on YouTube, click the link in the description to go straight to the listing. Once you've unlocked this listing, you'll be given everything you need to know about this business. So until next time, enjoy your digital journey.